Hey, it's James Riley.
And Beth Riley.
And excited to have a new edition of our Artist Spotlight podcast series. Beth, who we got?
Today we have Jackslacks on the phone.
Hey there, how you doing?
Hey, how's it, guys? Congrats on your recent nuptials and move to Memphis. Congratulations.
Man, I appreciate that. It's been one of those years. It's been a crazy year in the world, that's for sure. Speaking of course, we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. How are you spending your time during this?
I've been pretty fortunate, living in San Diego. They kept the beaches open, basically. They tried to shut the surfers out, I think, for the first 6 weeks, and they're in the water. I mean, it's like, come and get me kind of thing. They decided that for the sake of, people wanting to go and exercise on the beach, get in the water, surf, that kind of thing, that they would allow it, and then when you got out of the water, of course, pick up your stuff and get to your vehicle and get out of there. There was no lounging on the beach. But for me, I'm an avid body surfer, growing up on the East Coast. We didn't really have the California-sized waves, so everybody was kind of just kicking it and trying to catch a wave. So I've been progressing, I would say, at that. I don't get thrown into the washing machine as much as I used to. I also published a book. Going into it, it was a 20-month endeavor. It's called A Wanderlust Ramble, and it's my 5-year, 5-continent hitchhiking mission that, although not consecutive, began after my freshman year in college. Buddy and I made the first cross-country trip, and I was just hooked on the risk factor. Yeah, it took a while, but it veers into music and sports, social observation, and basically the awesome, uninhibited, unpretentious human connection you can have when 2 or more people are sharing conversation with the knowledge that in all likelihood they'll never see each other again. It's just amazing that everything's put aside kind of, and it's just amazing. So happy to say that's in the rear window now, so to speak. Just writing new songs, recording. As you know, I just released When Pigs Fly on Shield of Love. It's a tribute to my fallen lifelong friend Billy Bacon from a band I used to play in with him called Forbidden Pigs, and he passed last August from complications of rheumatoid arthritis. He was doing 250 plus shows a year before he got sick, and then the disease just crippled him. Bedridden, and he was unable to work. So they offered him kind of an experimental medication that he likened to chemo, in that it was an injection every 6 or 8 weeks or so, and it helped his joints, that's for sure. He could get out of bed. He even started playing a little bit, but in the end it basically shut down all his vital organs, and he passed. That was sad, but we got all the ex-pigs, and there had to be, 50 of them through the 30 years, man. And everybody was on board. Everybody wanted to record remotely. Some people, had recording equipment in their homes and stuff like that. So in the end, I think we did them proud.
You really touch on something about some of the remote recording stuff that you can do these days, of course. During a pandemic when it's a little tougher to get to a studio, being able to record like that is pretty cool.
It was a savior, really, because the guy that I've been working with out here, Mike Camus at Earthling Studios here in San Diego for the last decade, he was, under orders at certain points to close, so we'd get in, we'd do, maybe some basic tracks or whatever, and then they had this tier level of, restrictions to where then we'd be ready to go in and, do guitars or whatever we were going to do next, and the state would be like, that's it, it's another 3 weeks where you can't meet in person and all this stuff. So having people, throughout the years that I've played with and or been friends with that were able to just sit in their house and do parts and send them remotely saved us a lot of time. It probably wouldn't still be out,
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right about that, my friend.
So where does the name Jackslacks, where does that come from?
Like anything else, I borrowed it, as us musicians like to say. There's a 50s hit called Black Slacks by the Sparkletones.
Sure.
I don't know, I was ripping through some videos way back in the day, and I looked at these gangly teenagers all pimply up, and they had black slacks on, and they're doing this rockin' song, and I'm looking, it went to #1. I was like, Black Slacks. How about Jackslacks? So,
and it's a fun song, too. And I also love the Robert Gordon cover of it, too.
That's where I first heard it, actually, and I was just kind of taking it there and going backwards with it, because I figured, as great as Robert is as a vocalist, man, and some of the, the whole Rockabilly Boogie album, just so on and so forth. And growing up in New York, I was a huge fan of his,
Sure.
Back in the 70s and stuff. When I saw these kids, I was just like, wow, got to do it now. So been Jackslacks ever since.
That's cool. Who are some of your influences? I know you've gotten to play with some of those. Maybe you can touch on that as well.
I'm a rockabilly guy all the way. The golden era, basically, of rock and roll between 54 and 59. Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee, Chuck Berry, who, as you've just mentioned, I had the honor and privilege of opening for each of them at one point or another. Early Elvis, anything to do with Sun Records, the Rock and Roll Trio, Little Richard, so on and so forth. I'm a really big fan of both Eddie Cochran and Buddy Holly, not only because of their amazing songs, two rare birds who wrote, performed, and produced their own music in an era when that really didn't happen very much, if at all.
No.
So, just to be able to take control of your music like that back then when it was all orchestras and, other people writing your music and big producers and stuff, I just never, reclined from my position of, man, that's where I want to be someday, to be able to do that, and so those two guys would be probably two of my earliest influences from that era.
You're a rockabilly guy, but what about the Beatles? Let's get a little rock on you, but not just the Beatles, more like Ringo Starr.
I love me some Ringo for sure. The thing about the Beatles that caught my attention, and you're right, that's a good catch, because, my first two hand-me-down albums from my older brother Billy were Elvis's Golden Hits and Meet the Beatles, and I wore those records out, when I was pretty young. But what I was hearing was, you had McCartney doing his Little Richard imitation, you had Lennon, just a self-professed Chuck Berry head, doing bar chords, George doing the little Carl Perkins shuffle dance, playing a big Gretsch, and Ringo, man, just not overplaying anything or underplaying anything, but just playing every song for that song, like not trying to develop a particular style or being a particular influence in an overall sound, but really just as a genius, really taking apart each song and reconstructing it in his own, in what he was hearing. And, a lot of people through the years have tried to denounce Ringo and this and that, but I heard an interview one time where they said, hey, Ringo, who's the greatest drummer ever? And he just looked at him and he said, well, who was the greatest band ever? So...
It's interesting. Like, I don't understand sometimes a rockabilly purist attitude towards the Beatles, where they're kind of anti-Beatles. I feel like they were really important in kind of reintroducing us to Carl Perkins and a lot of rock and roll and blues stuff that we had, as America, had maybe moved past or forgotten. So, I think they were really important. And, yeah, I don't completely understand the anti-Beatles attitude that some may have.
Whereas the Stones were kind of more readily accepted in blues circles in the U.S. for kind of, their first couple albums were all basically covers, and they didn't really get that label that some of the rockabillys kind of wanted to lean on the Beatles, but they were clean cut. It was the biggest thing that anybody had ever seen. They were wearing suits, so I get it, but at the same time, for me, just discovering Elvis and the Beatles at the same time, I was hearing a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
I was hearing, Gretsch guitars and Ludwig drum, a Hofner bass, which I go back and, just rediscover some of George Martin's producing tricks and stuff like that, and from mono to stereo, but their big break was the 4-track, and wow, 4 tracks, Of course, they were, dubbing things down, but they always left a whole entire track for the bass, and that Hofner, man, it sounds like an upright bass, especially the way McCartney was playing it, so I just heard a lot of similarities, and so I'm a big, huge Beatle fan for sure.
Oh yeah. Tell me about the Cowpunk era, and maybe define what that is and some of the artists that were part of it.
Like I said, I had hitchhiked out to San Diego, I think after my freshman year in college, and I was like, oh my God, can you really fall in love with a place? I think I just did. And I knew I needed to go back and finish school because I wouldn't do it out here. But while I was out here that year, I was discovering different sounds. Like, the new wave was back, the punk was going off a little bit, and I was like, oh, thank God there's not any more processors gun music. I was like, all right. And so after I graduated and moved out here, I kind of stumbled into, like, I guess, what's called the initial San Diego roots rock scene, but there was this little tiny dive bar called Bodie's. We had just started the Forbidden Pigs. We were definitely the youngest and least experienced out of all the bands. The house bands, basically, any night of the week, you could catch Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper, the Paladins, and the Beat Farmers, and the Outriders. It was just an amazing lineup of talent, and we would all open, shows for each other and this, that, and the other thing. So the San Diego, the laid back, the surfers, they didn't know what to think of this. What is this? So there were a bunch of different names going on, but if I was going to give credence and credit to the San Diego cowpunk, it was guys like Country Dick Montana from the Beat Farmers and Buddy Blue from the Beat Farmers who, they had paid their dues before they got to what basically was a super group in San Diego terms, the Beat Farmers. They had Country Dick Snuggle Bunnies, and Buddy had been in a bunch of different bands, but it was just a combination of X and just a lot of Southern California meets, kind of punk, kind of new wave, kind of rockabilly. And so it incorporated all those American genres that, I guess are termed Americana, or, I'm going to say this for you, James, Ameripolitan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way back then, in the mid-'80s. So it's kind of cool. I mean, like I said, I kind of just stumbled into it. We had no idea what we were doing at the time, but, when you're watching these guys that are, polished and professional, they're entertainers, but they're just monsters on their instruments as well, you can't help but learn and, cut your teeth on it, man.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Ameripolitan too, because of Rosie Flores was out there playing at the Palomino, yep. And actually she brought Dale Watson out there. This was years before he did his first record. He and James Infield and others. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was coming out of that scene that people maybe don't always associate Americana or others to a certain area, but it really was. It was really, Big Sandy and stuff coming out there. I mean, it is definitely a big scene for sure, and still is, really. I mean, there's still a lot of people coming from that area, as you know.
Yeah, Russell Scott and the Red Hots, Social D was kind of popping their head out, and it was just, Los Lobos was kind of doing it then, sure. And yeah, it was neat, man. It was a good scene to be part of, for sure.
We touched upon your new EP, When Pigs Fly. Tell us about the song Hog Heaven, because you have a nice benefit for that too.
Yeah, actually, we were all grieving. It was kind of a shock because, we knew Billy was sick and that, but this new medicine, he was coming out here, a couple times a year, and he'd stay with me, and he was doing some club dates, and he was doing some parties and this and that. It was kind of great. And then all of a sudden he was gone. So Jerry Hot Rod Demink, who played with Billy for almost 10 years, actually he played with A.C. Reed for a long time, the blues guy out of Chicago. He's just a phenomenal guitarist too, Jerry. We decided, let's do a memorial concert for Billy. Tim Mays from the Casbah here in town made the venue available. It was in October of last year, so before the pandemic. We had Tom Yersley from Paladins, Jerry Rainey and Joey Harris from the Beat Farmers. There was Buzz Campbell showed up. There was just anybody that was kind of in that scene around San Diego showed up, and it was a lot of fun, man. We just played some songs. It was almost like a wake through music by remembering Billy. People were telling funny stories, and Billy was spinning someone around, and just funny stuff. So afterward, I was like, you know what, man, we should follow up on that momentum with some songs. So I started, fiddling around, basically, 12-bar blues kind of thing, Hog Heaven. I was thinking in the back of my head for some reason, the Oak Ridge Boys. I don't know why.
So, nothing says rockabilly like the Oak Ridge Boys. That's for sure.
Right, man, exactly. No, but anyway, so we got all these cats. Yeah, Hog Heaven. So that's definitely a tribute to Billy, and I thought, he left behind a 15-year-old daughter. She's 16 now, Sophia. Just a really talented artist. Give her a picture of anything and she can draw it, or just really talented person in that particular art. So I figured, any proceeds that we got from the song, I would send directly for her college fund. And I just talked to her today on the phone, and I was like, are how's it going? Have you picked out any colleges? And she tells me, she goes, well, I think I might get a scholarship for my art. There's a couple of colleges there in Missouri now. I said, oh, that's fantastic. So she goes, but this is a 16-year-old girl, and she goes, but I thought that since when I was an infant, when I was young, I had clubfoot. She said my dad had it, and he had to go through like this crazy, hurtful kind of thing. She goes, there's this Dr. Ponsetti at the University of Iowa at this children's hospital. His method has been perfected. It's really non-invasive. And I went out there, and for free, they put me up, corrected my clubfoot, and me and my dad always talked about if we had some extra money that we would donate to that cause at the University of Iowa. She said, if I get this scholarship, would you mind if we just send whatever monies that are made to the clinic, to the hospital, at the children's hospital? I said, you just touched my heart in a big way, kid.
Wow.
I said, so yeah, I had some money coming in. Thank God, it's doing okay, and so we sent the first payment today to them. And I was like, that's special, man. When someone of that age can look beyond their own life, their own wants, and pinpoint something like that. So yeah, that's kind of where all the money's going to go now, and hopefully she'll get that scholarship as well.
Yeah.
We had talked earlier about your influences. What kind of music are you listening to these days?
I still listen to Buzz Campbell a lot. He's a dear friend of mine, and he had an album called Shivers and Shakes not too long ago that I really like. Another cat called Rip Carson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's been out here for a while. He'd be someone to look into. He's a pretty good guy. There's like a Christian rockabilly band called the Altar Billies. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, I know. Mike Stand, I think, had reached out to me. Yeah,
they kind of got my ear now. I heard some stuff on rockabilly radio from them, like back in the day. I'm not even, maybe a little bit later, maybe like 8-10 years ago. I was like, But their more recent stuff, it's pretty dialed in, man. I was pretty impressed with it. The person that I've really been getting into out here is a blues singer, soul and blues singer called Whitney Shea. Have you heard of her?
I have heard that name.
Yeah, she's really good. She's a San Diego singer. She's got a great band and a great new album called Stand Up. It's a little socio, political, but she's doing it, man. She's, in the Bonnie Raitt kind of vintage sound. I really like her a lot. And I guess Lee Rocker just put out a new song called Pickin' and a Grinnin'.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. Have you heard it?
I have, yeah.
It's pretty cool, man.
Oh,
I kind of like
absolutely.
it.
I love anything from Lee Rocker.
People think of the Doghouse Bass, man, and that's the first picture they get in their mind, and for good reason, man. The guy is, to me, undoubtedly the greatest upright player out there, and so yeah. So that's probably what's going on my turntable these days, Beth. What about you?
I'm into just about any and everything except for rap and hip hop.
Okay.
I tell you, her show, Bopping with Beth, I'm going to brag on her here for a second. I mean, it's turned me on to so much stuff that I wasn't aware of, and so yeah, I mean, just going through the history of things. So she's too modest to admit it, but I learned a lot of stuff from her show too.
Yeah, awesome. No, I was listening to the Blues Break with Beth on your show, and it sounds like you know your history going back. I mean, I'm John Lee Hooker, Howlin' Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson. Actually, Beth, here's one for you. Check out an old Detroit blues a guy that did some stuff on chess, Bobo Jenkins.
Okay.
And see what you think of him. He's always one of my favorites. He's got a song called Shake 'Em On Down, which is pretty cool. It's just got all that, down and dirty blues.
Yeah. I'm big time into blues and classic rock. James Taylor is my favorite.
James Taylor?
James Taylor.
Yeah, for sure, man. He's still out and about, I think, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
We were going to see him in Memphis. He and another one of her favorites, Jackson Brown, were touring. Jackson got the COVID-19, and they ended up canceling this tour. I think they were rescheduling it for next year, so we'll definitely go see that one.
Yeah, if the Rona is gone.
It's funny, Beth. There's what brought the whole thing right into my face in a real way was journey of a really good best buddy from New York, guy I went to high school with, Jimmy Cannizzaro. He's a hilarious comedian. He was working at the Gotham Comedy Club in Manhattan when this whole thing came down. You know, he's shaking hands. How you doing? Can I get you a drink? Whatever. He got the COVID early, like in March or April, and he almost died. I mean, he was on a ventilator for 2 weeks. His blood oxygen got down to 80.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so lots of prayers, man. Thousands of us praying for him and sending good vibes. And thankfully, for whatever reason, at the very end, his doctor tried to give him one of the experimental drugs. That in combination with whatever happened, he made it. So we were like, shoot. This guy, Cano's his nickname, he used to own a music venue on Long Island called the Swiss Tavern. So picture Cano's Swiss Tavern. You know? And but he hosted tons of amazing musicians, and you know, speaking of James Taylor and Jackson Browne, I mean, Christopher Cross would come in, Alan Parsons, Denny Lane, just you know, all these kind of '70s guys, man. Billy Joel. But there was an unforgettable night with Jack Bruce from Cream. You know.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So some of the touring musicians that used to hang out in the neighborhood and or had side bands at this bar, you know, when they were playing with whoever, they had an off night, they'd bring them to Cano's for drinks. And but it was funny because it's funny how some of these nights turned out. I mean, Jack Bruce had no intention of playing at all. I mean, he was just, you know, oh, I'm dead, you know, just in thick Scottish accent. Everyone's like, is he drunk or we just can't understand him? What's going on? But at like 2:30 in the morning, he starts wobbling around, you know, and he just got a mite too close to the stage. And some of the guys from the band, man, they just pulled him up onto the stage, slapped the bass around his neck, and he did Sunshine of Your Love, Born Under a Bad Sign, which is a great blues song, and White Room, man. But speaking of, you know, some of those guys, man, I mean, oh my God, so much history. And so much good music for sure.
Yeah, hoping we get back to a lot of venues playing a lot of live music again. Just we can have more stories like that.
Guys that, you know, are playing, you know, 200 plus shows a year or whatever, you know, maybe just on that, you know, mid circuit or whatever, are getting crushed, you know, and it's just, you know, you just pray for them and hope that things get back to normal a little bit more sooner than later. They're doing these drive-in concerts out here and stuff like that, and you know, it's cool and everything like that, but you know, I mean, I don't know how much money they're really generating for the artists. So, like you said, man, hopefully sooner than later.
Speaking of sooner rather than later, what is next for Jackslacks?
Good question.
Real quick, fast and in a hurry, not later.
Funny.
I try.
No, I appreciate it. Trust me, I'm an armchair comedian myself. So I've got these 3 songs in the can with the EP When Pigs Fly. I'm hoping to get 7 more written, recorded, and produced by the time that the live gigs open back up. So I'm basically shooting for another full length. And then after that, you know, for years I was going down to Florida in the wintertime, and I had a pretty long-standing gig down there. But obviously, you know, that's not happening right now. So I'm just going to look forward to taking the time to hopefully write some good songs and get some good cats to play on them. And, you know, for me, it's the old motto, you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and that's usually me. So I just get as many amazing musicians as I can, and thank God that they're willing and able to play, especially now, you know, some of the guys that, even the big shots, you know, that are they're arenas and this, that, and the other thing, they're bored out of their minds. They're like, yeah, send me another song. I'm like, really? Okay, you got it.
I've seen a lot of musicians say that, you know, if you need some bass parts or something, let me know. And so there are some silver linings to this time period that maybe we initially weren't thinking about. But it is kind of cool to be able to have a lot of people come play on some things because they have some extra time. So that's cool.
Oh, for sure, man. I just totally appreciate the friends that have been nurtured and developed throughout the years, man. I mean, I'm just one of those guys. It's like, if I'm your friend, don't ever plan on getting rid of me, you know? And so, yeah, Beth, just to answer your question, yeah, just try and hopefully have 7 more songs for another full length here, I guess within the next, 3 to 5 months.
Well, that'll be cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, man, really appreciate your time out here. Where do you like to send people if they want to find out more information on Jackslacks and where to purchase some music?
The new EP, When Pigs Fly, is available on both iTunes and can be found on my Bandcamp page to both stream, listen, and purchase any of that music. Those would be the best sites for me. Just before we go real quick, I just got a shout out to my friends and family on Long Island, Detroit, South Florida, and here in San Diego. Got to mention again all the talented musicians who perform on this record. Thanks a lot, guys. I love you all. Just remember, everyone, stay calm. Respect others, even if they don't look or sound like you, because we're all in this together.
Absolutely, man. Some great words of advice. Always good to talk to you, and hopefully we'll do this again very soon.
Sounds good, James. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Jackslacks.
All right, y'all. Take care.